The ballroom shimmered with gold light, chandeliers dripping crystals that caught the glances of 100 champagne flutes raised in toast. The air hummed with the string quartet in the corner, delicate bows sliding across violins, mingling with laughter and whispers that had cost millions of dollars to orchestrate. This wasn't just any engagement party, it was the engagement party of the season. Ethan Kane, 32 years old, CEO of Kane Enterprises, billionaire in both title and reality, stood at the center of it all. Tall, lean, his dark-tailored tuxedo cut like it had been designed for him alone. He looked the part of America's most eligible bachelor finally settling down. His black hair was slicked back neatly, his sharp jawline illuminated every time he turned under the chandelier. Cameras from society blogs hovered discreetly near the walls, trying to capture every intimate glance between him and his fiancée. Madeline Hart, Madeline the dazzling blonde with eyes the color of pale turquoise, was perfection itself, or so it seemed. Her gown hugged her curves like a second skin, sequins scattering light like fireflies. She smiled with practiced grace, kissed Ethan's cheek, and clung to his arm with the ease of someone born to be adored. Tonight was her triumph, and yet, Ethan felt the nagging emptiness in his chest, a hollowness that all the champagne in the world couldn't fill. He forced a smile as another board member clapped him on the shoulder. To the future, Kane. You finally picked a woman worthy of your empire. Worthy. The word rattled him. As if Madeline was a trophy for being rich enough, powerful enough. Ethan raised his glass, swallowing down the gnawing doubt with the bubbling champagne. That was when it happened. A voice, so soft it barely cut through the orchestra's strings, brushed his ear. There's a drug in your drink. Ethan froze, the glass halfway to his lips. Slowly he turned. Standing just behind him, half in the shadows of the glittering ballroom, was a young black woman. She was no older than 20, dressed not in a gown like the other guests, but in a black and white server's uniform. A catering staff member, tray balanced carefully on her hand. Her eyes, wide and urgent, locked on his die. He blinked. What did you just say? Her voice was low, trembling, but steady enough to cut straight to him. Don't drink it. They put something in it. Ethan's pulse hammered in his ears. For a split second, the rational side of his brain screamed. This is absurd. This is a party in my honor. Who would drug me? But the way she said it, the urgency, the raw fear struck something deeper than logic. Before he could respond, Madeline reappeared at his side, her hand slipping around his arm. Darling, she purred, her smile blinding as she noticed the staff member. Are the servers bothering you? The young woman stiffened under Madeline's icy gaze. Ethan looked between them, confusion mounting. The staffer dipped her head, quickly backing away. I'm sorry, sir. Excuse me. She vanished into the crowd before Ethan could stop her. Strange girl, Madeline said lightly, kissing his cheek again. Don't let the help rattle you tonight. This is our moment. But Ethan's champagne glass still hovered untouched in his hand. His throat had gone dry. The night carried on in a blur of congratulations, speeches and laughter, but Ethan couldn't shake the warning. Every time he looked at the golden drink in his glass, the words echoed, "There's a drug in your drink." By the time the quartet shifted into a livelier tune, he excused himself, slipping into the marble-floored hallway away from the guests. He set the champagne flute on a pedestal, staring at it as if the bubbles might spell out the truth. Sir? He turned. It was her again, the young woman in the uniform. Her name tag read Amara. Why did you say that? Ethan asked, his voice low but sharp. Amara glanced around, making sure no one was near, then whispered, Because I saw it. I saw her put something in your glass. He stared. Who? Amara's eyes flicked toward the ballroom. Your fiancée. Ethan let out a laugh forced, too loud in the empty hall. That's ridiculous. But Amara didn't flinch. I'm telling the truth. I was clearing a table right next to the bar. She waited until you were talking to someone else, then she slipped something in." The room tilted for Ethan, the chandeliers in the distance blurring. His stomach churned. He wanted to dismiss it as some prank, some jealous outburst from a stranger. But the look in Amara's eyes, steady, pleading, and without a trace of hesitation, made it impossible to brush off. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked finally. Because nobody else will." Her voice trembled now. "And you don't deserve it. Whatever game she's playing, you don't deserve to be a pawn in it." Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but footsteps echoed. Down the hall, Madeline's laughter. Instinctively, Amara stepped back, slipping behind a column as Madeline appeared, radiant and dangerous all at once. "There you are," Madeline said sweetly. "Everyone's asking where you've gone. Come back to the party." Ethan glanced once toward the column, but Amara was already gone. That night, after the guests left and the glitter of the evening faded into silence, Ethan sat alone in his penthouse, staring at the untouched champagne glass he had smuggled home like evidence. It sat on his kitchen counter, catching the dim city light streaming through the windows. He couldn't drink it. He couldn't throw it out. It just sat there, daring him to believe Amara's words. Madeline had kissed him goodnight hours ago, all soft lips and whispered promises of forever, before leaving for her own apartment. She didn't suspect a thing. Or maybe she did. Ethan leaned forward, running a hand down his face. What the hell is going on? The next morning, sleep-deprived and restless, Ethan carried the champagne glass to a lab Kane Enterprises used for private research. He handed it to Dr. Levinson, a chemist who had been with the company for over 2 decades. "Run a full toxicology screen," Ethan instructed, "and keep this between us." Levinson raised a brow but nodded. "Of course, Mr. Kane." Hours later, the results landed on Ethan's desk like a bomb. The champagne had been laced with a potent sedative, one that could have knocked him unconscious for hours. His hands shook as he set the paper down. Amara had been telling the truth. That evening, Ethan returned to the hotel where the party had been held, determined to find her. He pushed past staff until he found the catering supervisor. "The young woman who worked the event last night, Amara. Where is she?" The supervisor frowned. "Amara? Oh, she didn't show up today. No call, nothing. Honestly, I don't think she'd be back. She's had a hard time keeping jobs." "What do you mean?" Ethan pressed it at. The man shrugged. "Always seems to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Trouble follows her." Ethan's chest tightened. Trouble or someone making sure trouble followed her? As he stepped outside, the New York air biting against his face, Ethan knew one thing for certain. His perfect engagement had just cracked open like a glass dropped on marble. And the girl who whispered a warning was at the heart of the truth. But where had she gone? And why had Madeline, his fiancée, the woman he was supposed to trust with his life, wanted him unconscious? Ethan's gaze swept the city, neon lights glaring in the distance. He felt the first true pang of fear since he was a boy. The party was over, and the real story had just begun. The city moved at its usual frenetic pace, yellow cabs honking, streetlights flickering across slick pavement as if nothing had changed. But for Ethan Kane, the entire world had tilted. His fiancée, the woman the media had branded his perfect match, had slipped something into his drink. And the only reason he wasn't sprawled unconscious on the marble floor of his engagement party was because a stranger, a waitress named Amara, had whispered a warning. Ethan sat in the back of his town car that evening, the results of the toxicology report folded neatly in his pocket. His driver glanced at him through the mirror. "Home, sir?" "No," Ethan said, his voice sharper than intended. "Take me to Harlem, 145th Street. The driver's eyes flicked up, startled. Ethan rarely went anywhere in the city that didn't gleam with glass towers and valet parking. "Yes, sir." Ethan's jaw was tight the entire ride uptown, the weight of the folded paper in his pocket pressing against his chest. He replayed the moment in the ballroom again and again. Amara's steady eyes, her trembling whisper, "There's a drug in your drink." The car pulled to a stop in front of a narrow building with peeling paint and a flickering light above the door. Ethan stepped out, drawing a few curious stares. He was overdressed in his tailored overcoat, far from the polished lobbies he usually belonged to. He had tracked Amara's last known address from the catering company's records. He climbed the cracked stairs, each creak echoing like a warning. He knocked. After a long pause, the door opened. Just a crack. Amara stood there, eyes wary, face tired. "You," she whispered, as if she hadn't expected him to really come. "I need to talk to you," Ethan said. "Please." Her eyes darted down the hall. Finally, she unlatched the door, letting him in. The apartment was small, 2 rooms and a kitchenette, walls patched with peeling wallpaper. A stack of textbooks sat on the table, alongside bills and a worn laptop. "You shouldn't be here," Amara said, crossing her arms. "If she finds out, she did put something in my drink," Ethan cut in. "The lab confirmed it." Amara's lips parted, but she didn't look surprised, just sad. "I tried to warn you." "Why?" Ethan asked. "Why risk yourself? You barely know me." She met his eyes. "Because I've been where you are. Thinking I was safe. Thinking someone loved me." Her voice wavered. "And then finding out the truth in the worst way possible." Ethan studied her. She couldn't have been more than 21. Her braids were pulled back in a bun, her dark eyes carrying years of weight no one her age should have carried. "What do you know about Madeline?" he asked. Amara hesitated. "Enough. I've seen her before. With men like you, and it never ends well for them." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying she's dangerous. She doesn't love you. She loves your money, your name, what you can give her. And if you get in the way of that," she broke off, shaking her head. Ethan leaned forward. "Then why drug me?" What was she planning to do? Amara's gaze dropped to the floor. "That's what you need to find out before it's too late." For the next week, Ethan lived a double life. By day, he played the role of devoted fiancé, smiling beside Madeline at charity galas, holding her hand for paparazzi photos, listening to her laugh like champagne poured into a crystal glass. By night he dug. He paid private investigators to dig into her past. He reviewed financial statements she thought he never looked at. And he kept circling back to Amara, the only person who had risked herself to tell him the truth. Their conversations were brief, stolen in shadows. "A coffee here, a quiet bench in Central Park there. She's not who she pretends to be," Amara said one night, her voice low as they sat beneath the glow of a street lamp. "I saw her at another event months ago. She was with a different man, a tech investor. He dropped off the map right after she got close to him." Ethan frowned. Dropped off the map? Rumors that he had a breakdown, checked himself into a private facility. "But I don't believe it. Not after what I saw." Ethan felt his stomach twist. "You think she did something to him?" Amara's silence was answer enough. Back in his penthouse, Ethan began noticing things he had ignored before. Madeline was too polished, too careful. She never slipped, never lost her temper, never let him see behind the curtain. Even her affection felt rehearsed, like she'd studied what love was supposed to look like. One night, as she slept beside him, he opened her clutch bag, heart pounding. Inside, amid lipstick and perfume, was a small amber vial. No label, just liquid. He put it back before she stirred. But that was the night Ethan knew. Amara was right. The pressure built. A merger loomed for Kane Enterprises, a billion-dollar deal. That could either secure Ethan's legacy or ruin him. Madeline pushed him to sign the papers quickly, to lock things down before the board grew restless. "You hesitate too much," she told him, her turquoise eyes glinting over dinner. Sometimes you just need to trust the people closest to you. Trust. The word burned like acid. Later that night, Ethan met Amara again. They sat in her cramped apartment, the city roaring faintly beyond the thin walls. "She wants me to sign," Ethan said. "She's pressing harder than ever. I think whatever she's planning, it's tied to that deal." Amara bit her lip. "Then you can't let her win." "But you can't just confront her either. She deny it, she twist it." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion etched into his face. "Then what do I do?" Amara hesitated, then said softly, "You set a trap. You make her show who she really is." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in weeks, he felt something other than fear, hope. The plan was dangerous, reckless even. But Ethan had built an empire on risk. At the next gala, cameras flashing and champagne flowing once again, Ethan played his part perfectly. Madeline sparkled beside him, leaning into his shoulder, whispering promises of forever into his ear, but Ethan never let his glass leave his sight. He waited, watched. And then he saw it, Madeline's hand, quick and practiced, brushing against his glass as she laughed with a guest. Too smooth, too subtle for anyone else to notice. But Ethan saw the way her fingers dipped just slightly. The practiced sleight of hand of someone who had done this before. His heart thundered, but his face stayed calm. He lifted the glass, swirled it. Then he excused himself to the stage. The orchestra hushed, guests turning toward him. Ethan stood in the golden spotlight, his glass raised high. "Friends," he began, his voice steady though his pulse raced. "Tonight we celebrate love, partnership, and trust." His eyes flicked toward Madeline, who smiled brilliantly at the crowd. But sometimes trust is the easiest mask to wear. A murmur rippled through the room. Ethan continued, his words sharp as knives. "This glass, this very glass I hold, has been tampered with. Drugged by the woman I was supposed to marry." The room gasped. Cameras flashed. Madeline's face froze, then cracked into a practiced laugh. "Ethan," she said, voice dripping with incredulity. "What are you talking about? That's absurd." But Ethan reached into his pocket, pulling out the toxicology report. He held it high. "This isn't absurd. This is evidence. Last week at our engagement party, I was warned by someone who cared enough to tell me the truth. And tonight, I caught you trying to do it again." The ballroom erupted, whispers, gasps, the crackle of scandal ripping through silk and jewels. Madeline's mask faltered at last. Her turquoise eyes hardened, her smile vanished. "You think you've won, Ethan?" she hissed under her breath, venom dripping into her perfect voice. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Security closed in. Guests pulled back. And Ethan, for the first time in weeks, felt the strange, heady relief of standing in the light instead of the shadows. But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning, because Madeline's heart wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. The fallout hit like a storm. Within 24 hours of the gala, Ethan Kane's engagement was no longer a love story splashed across glossy magazines. It was front-page scandal. Billionaire CEO calls off engagement in dramatic gala showdown. Madeline Hart, society darling or master manipulator. Insider leaks toxicology report tied to Kane engagement party. The media tore into it, dissecting every moment of the confrontation, replaying shaky cell phone footage uploaded by guests. Ethan's calm but cutting speech, the look on Madeline's face, the gasp of the crowd, it was viral within hours. But Ethan didn't feel triumphant. He felt hunted. The board of Kane Enterprises demanded answers. His stock dipped 3 points. Overnight, rumors swirling about his judgment, his personal life bleeding into business. Investors whispered that a man so easily duped by a woman might be just as reckless in boardrooms. And then there were the threats. It began with subtle things. His car tires slashed in the parking garage, his email hacked, then escalated. A brick through the window of his penthouse with a single note tied to it. "You'll regret this." Madeline had vanished from public view, but Ethan could feel her shadow everywhere. He met Amara again, this time in a diner on the Lower East Side, where the smell of frying bacon and coffee masked the tension between them. She sat across from him in her faded denim jacket, hands wrapped around a chipped mug. "You think she's behind the threats?" Amara asked quietly. Ethan nodded, exhaustion written on his face. "Who else? She's not going to take being exposed lightly. She'll come after me, and maybe you." Amara's lips pressed into a thin line. "She's dangerous, Ethan. I told you." He leaned forward, his voice low. "Then help me stop her." Amara's eyes widened. "Me? You're the only one who saw it before I did. You're the only one who told me the truth when everyone else played along. You have instincts, Amara. I need them." She shook her head, braids brushing her shoulders. "This isn't my fight." "Maybe not," Ethan said softly. "But you're already in it." Her silence said she knew he was right. The next week was war. Madeline re-emerged, not as the disgraced fiancée but as the victim. She went on talk shows, her turquoise eyes brimming with tears. "Ethan is under immense pressure," she told one host, voice quivering. "I love him deeply, but he's been paranoid, stressed about his company. I would never hurt him. This is a misunderstanding blown out of proportion." Her performance was flawless. Sympathy poured in. The narrative began to twist. Was Ethan Kane unraveling? Was the warning waitress just an opportunist? Ethan slammed the TV off in frustration. "She's turning it around on me." Amara, perched on the arm of his leather sofa, said, "She's good at this. She's been practicing her whole life." "We need proof," Ethan said. "Real proof. Something that makes it impossible for her to play the victim card again." Amara hesitated. "And how do you plan on getting that?" Ethan looked at her, a sharp determination sparking in his eyes. "We let her think she's winning." The trap was set at the charity auction 2 weeks later. Ethan attended with the same cool composure, dressed in another custom tux, smiling for cameras. But this time, he wasn't alone. Amara walked beside him, not as staff, but as his guest. She wore a simple black dress, elegant but unpretentious, her hair pulled back to reveal the quiet strength of her face. The contrast between her authenticity and Madeline's glittering facade was striking. The media buzzed instantly. Who was Ethan Kane's mystery companion? Madeline was there too, radiant as ever, eyes flashing like knives when she spotted them. Throughout the evening, Ethan kept close, knowing the plan hinged on proximity and timing. When the champagne was poured, Ethan once again watched. This time, he caught her in the act, clearly her fingers dipping, too quick for most eyes. But not for his dot, and this time, the glass she tampered with wasn't Ethan's dot, it was Amara's. Ethan's blood ran cold. Madeline smiled sweetly across the room, raising her own glass in a mock toast. Amara reached for her drink, unaware. Ethan's hand shot out, catching hers mid-air. Their eyes locked, his grip iron. "Don't," he whispered. Confusion flickered across her face, then realization. Ethan rose, lifting the tainted glass high for all to see. "Once again," he said loudly, his voice cutting through the chatter, "we have a performance." Guests turned, cameras rose. "This glass," Ethan declared, "was prepared not for me, but for my guest." The same trick, the same poison. Proof that the first time was no accident. Gasps erupted. Amara stood frozen, exposed under the lights, as Madeline's mask finally cracked. Her turquoise eyes blazed with fury, her perfect smile gone. "You bastard," she hissed, too low for the crowd but sharp enough for Ethan to hear. Security swarmed. This time, Ethan had come prepared. His private investigators, stationed discreetly, confiscated the glass and sealed it immediately. "Lab results will be out in hours," Ethan told the stunned crowd. And when they are, the world will know what Madeline Hart really is. Madeline struggled, screaming protests, her composure shattered. He's lying. He's setting me up. You think I need him? I could have had anyone, but it was too late. The cameras caught everything, the fury, the venom, the truth slipping out in her desperation. Later that night, back in the quiet of Ethan's penthouse, Amara sat across from him, her hands still. Trembling, she stopped, shaking her head. She was going to drug me. Ethan nodded, his jaw tight. She knew you were the only one who could ruin her. She wanted to silence you. Silence hung between them, heavy and raw. Then Ethan leaned forward, his voice softer. You saved my life, Amara. Twice. I won't forget that. She looked at him, her eyes softer now, searching his face. You don't owe me anything, but Ethan shook his head. I owe you everything. By morning, the toxicology confirmed it again. Sedatives, identical to those found before. The news exploded. This time, no amount of crocodile tears could save Madeline. The media turned vicious. Madeline Hart exposed as serial manipulator. Billionaire's fiancée caught attempting to drug rival. Arrests were made. Prosecutors began circling. Madeline's glamorous empire crumbled overnight. But Ethan knew better than to celebrate, because people like Madeline didn't go down without taking others with them. And as he stood at his window, the city sprawling below, he felt it deep in his bones. The war wasn't over, not yet. Winter swept into Manhattan with bitter winds and a gray sky that pressed low over the skyscrapers. Ethan Kane stood in the courthouse hallway, the polished marble beneath his shoes reflecting the chaos around him, journalists shouting questions, cameras flashing, lawyers weaving through the crowd with briefcases clutched like shields. This wasn't the boardroom or the ballroom. This was war in a different arena. And the woman he once thought he would marry now sat in the courtroom, flanked by high-priced attorneys, her turquoise eyes as sharp as ever despite the handcuffs that gleamed against her wrists. Madeline Hart. The name that once sparkled on society pages now dripped with scandal. She had been charged with attempted assault, attempted poisoning, and conspiracy. But Ethan knew she wasn't the kind of woman who went quietly. The trial became a national spectacle. Prosecutors presented the toxicology reports, the videos from the gala, witness statements, including Amara's. Amara sat nervously on the stand, hands clenched in her lap, her voice steady as she recounted the night she whispered to Ethan, "There's a drug in your drink." She spoke of the fear in her chest, the risk she had taken, and the glass Madeline had tampered with for her at the charity auction. The courtroom hung on every word. Ethan watched her with a strange mix of gratitude and guilt. She didn't belong here, thrust into the public eye, dragged into a billionaire's nightmare. And yet, without her, he wouldn't even be alive to watch. Madeline's defense was slick. Her lawyers painted Amara as an opportunist, a woman seeking fame by attaching herself to Ethan's name. They spun tales of paranoia, suggesting Ethan had staged the entire scandal to avoid marriage, but the evidence was too strong. The vial found in Madeline's purse, the chemical match between it and the glasses. Her voice on a hot mic moment, caught whispering venom in the chaos of the auction. You think I need him? I could have had anyone. The jury deliberated less than a day. Guilty. When the verdict rang out, Madeline's mask shattered completely. She lunged to her feet, shouting across the courtroom, "You think this saves you, Ethan?" Her voice was shrill, echoing off the marble walls. "You think you've won? You're nothing without me. Nothing." Bailiffs restrained her, dragging her from the room as cameras captured every second. Ethan sat still, chest heaving, the finality of it crashing over him like a wave. Afterward, outside the courthouse, the winter sun broke through the clouds, blinding after weeks of shadows. Reporters swarmed, microphones thrust forward. "Mr. Kane, what does this verdict mean for you?" Is it true you're seeing the young woman who warned you? Do you regret ever proposing to Madeline Hart? Ethan raised a hand, silencing the chaos. What this means, he said, his voice steady, is that the truth will always surface, no matter how deep someone tries to bury it. And I am alive today because one woman had the courage to speak that truth. He glanced sideways. Amara stood just behind him, wrapped in a simple wool coat, her face half hidden by the scarf around her neck. But her eyes met his, warm and unflinching. Cameras flashed, hungry for more. But Ethan stepped back, guiding Amara away from the crush of questions and lights. They walked down the courthouse steps together, into the cold air, away from the roar of the crowd. That night, the city seemed quieter. Ethan and Amara sat in his penthouse, no longer billionaire and waitress, but two people bound by something neither of them had expected. Why me? Amara asked softly, staring out at the skyline. Out of everyone in that ballroom, why did you believe me? Ethan thought for a moment, then said, because you looked me in the eye and told me the truth when no one else dared. I've lived my whole life surrounded by people who want something from me. You wanted nothing, except for me to be safe. Amara swallowed, her throat tight. I never wanted to be part of this. I just couldn't stay quiet. And that, Ethan said gently, makes you braver than anyone I've ever known. Silence stretched between them, not awkward, but heavy. With meaning, you saved me, Ethan added, his voice raw. And I don't just mean from the drink. You saved me from living a lie. Amara turned to him then, her eyes shimmering with something unspoken. For a moment, neither moved. The city glowed around them, the weight of everything they had endured. Pressing them closer together, weeks passed. Kane Enterprises steadied under Ethan's leadership, investors reassured by his resilience. Madeline faded from headlines, her empire of illusions crumbling in the shadow of her conviction. But Ethan never forgot the woman who had changed everything with a single whisper. Amara, too, struggled with the new world she'd been thrust into. The attention was overwhelming, people recognizing her on the subway, tabloids speculating about her relationship with Ethan. But through it all, Ethan never left her side. One evening, he found her on the balcony of his penthouse, the city lights flickering below. She looked small against the vastness of it all. I don't belong in your world, she murmured. Ethan stepped beside her, resting his hand on the railing. Then maybe my world needs to change. She looked at him, startled. I spent years building walls around myself, Ethan said. Money, power, a perfect fiancée, and it almost killed me. But you, he paused, emotion thick in his throat. You reminded me what it feels like to trust, to actually live. Her breath caught. Ethan. He turned fully to her, his eyes steady. I don't care about the headlines. I don't care about what people expect. All I care about is this. His hand brushed hers gently. Us. For a heartbeat, the city fell silent. Then Amara's fingers curled around his, anchoring him, and in that moment, under the cold New York sky, Ethan Kane finally felt free. Epilogue. Months later, Ethan and Amara walked through Central Park as spring returned, blossoms scattering like confetti through the air. Life had settled into something resembling normal, if normal could ever describe the bond forged in scandal and survival. The world still whispered, of course, billionaire and waitress, scandal and savior. But for Ethan, none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was the way Amara's laughter cut through the noise, the way her presence filled the hollow spaces inside him. What mattered was that one night, in a ballroom glittering with lies, a brave young woman had leaned close and whispered the truth. There's a drug in your drink. And because of that whisper, he had uncovered not just betrayal, but a chance at something real, something worth living for.